Hello, everyone. Cecilia from ISSIP here. So we have a special guest from Boston today, Nicole Reineke. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Could you introduce yourself to the ISSIP community?
Yeah, my name is Nicole Reineke. I'm currently the Vice President of Innovation at Iron Mountain. I'm in charge of the vision and strategy and oversight for the global innovation practice here. And my team uses customer-centered innovation to develop and prototype new solutions and actually completely new user experiences that help make our customers' lives easier. I'm very involved in digital transformation of organizations of all sizes. Prior to my current job, I was actually the Senior Distinguished Engineer at Dell Technologies, where I was leading the way on sustainability, data management, and IT automation research.
Amazing. Cool. Very exciting to have you here. You mentioned about your book, Compassion Driven Innovation. In the survey we ran last November, I'm so curious to learn more about that book. I know that it was published early this year, right?
Yep, just a few months ago.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Could you just share some the content of this book? What is this book for?
Yeah, so it's a culmination of what I've learned over the past 25 years, as well as what my peers, Deborah and Hannah, have learned over the past 20 plus years of being in the high-tech industry. And it's all about why innovation fails and what we can do to actually succeed. Because the causes of failure, I've done quite a bit of research on this, and a couple of years ago, I actually went out and interviewed a large number of global innovation leaders to figure out why innovation didn't succeed in their organizations or what would make it succeed. And it turns out there were four very universal causes of failure. And there's this failure of exclusivity where you assign innovation to like a small team or one type of people, or only the engineers work on innovation, right? That's a very common cause of failure. And then there's this other cause, which is you work on the wrong challenges. So you actually don't identify what the customer's most pressing need is. You solve something, it's great and interesting, but it was never going to connect because you're not solving sort of that first level need. The next one is you have this problem where you've overestimated the value of what you create. And that will absolutely take down entire innovation teams. Then the last is really the most shocking to me. It's this idea of this unsupported moonshot. So when you're in an innovation team or when you're in an organization and you come up with a spectacular invention that connects with customers and is actually innovation, and you can even get customers on board, but if you fail to bring your organization on board, they will kill it every time. Some people call that not invented here syndrome. Some people call it unsupported moonshots, but basically it's devastating. Right. And that completely will derail careers. People will quit jobs, they'll quit industries over something like this. And those are really common. And I realized that they're things that I've experienced throughout my career in different ways at different organizations. And a few years ago, managed to find this series of successes that happened over and over and over again. And I tried to figure out, what are we doing differently that we're actually hitting all of this success? So I went from having, sort of one patent filed in the first 40 years of my life to suddenly 75 through a period of 3 years. And there's something happened, and I knew something happened. And I finally recognized there was this gap between strategy, right? So somebody's saying, here's what you're going to go after, and development. And in between the two, there's actually this process that needs to happen. And I had accidentally started doing that process in collaboration with some of my peers. And we hadn't written it down. We didn't know we were doing it. We just knew that we were given strategic direction. And before we actually went into that development practice, we had created this space where we were able to really sit and think through what we were about to do and make it so that we could innovate and then bring interesting and important things to market in a way that didn't alienate our entire organization. So that's what this book is about. It's about finding that space between strategy and development. And what do you do in that space? And then how do you use that space to avoid those four main reasons that most people fail at innovation? And so we actually wrote it down. This is exactly how we did it. There are 3 case studies as part of it, so you can follow the steps. And I've implemented it at a couple of organizations now, and it's
Oh, wow.
fantastic.
That's
Yeah,
amazing. I mean, I just feel like I have to buy the book. Is it available on Amazon?
it
So
is. It's available on Amazon. Yep.
okay, because I mean, like, 'cause I get to see that too, like many organizations that I've worked for so far, I get to see that there's a gap between strategy and then the development, the tactical solutions.
Yep.
And sometimes more than often, like developers are complaining, I don't know the strategy. What are we doing now? I'm waiting for the strategy. And then
Yep.
like the leadership said it, strategy and visions are here. What are you guys doing? Like there's a gap. And like what
Yeah.
would you call this space between strategy and development efforts? What's it called? Is it like tactical enablers, or what do we call this space?
Yeah. So we actually call it compassion,
Compassion.
right? Which is
That's right.
and it's the reason we call it compassion is because it's the space where you actually discover how to relieve your customer's suffering. And how do you create a sustainable internal way of relieving that suffering in a way that moves your organization forward, right? Because if you think about this idea, we have a lot of things around like empathy, like, oh, we're supposed to do empathy driven design, and we feel for the suffering of our customers, and when we feel their suffering, we can design better things. But the truth is that's only half of it. Your customer suffering is important, but your internal organization's feelings, that's what derails more than half of innovation. So you have to create this compassionate look internally. What can we do? How can we do it? Why should we do it? And create a compassion internally, and then say, okay, now I want to relieve the suffering of my customers using the skills and tool sets that my company has in a way that's aligned with our strategy. And so you can actually sit down and you can identify that and think about it and very clearly say, okay, who are the subject matter experts internally? Why are we doing this? How are we doing this? Let's think this through. Now let's create a journey map, and not just a customer journey map. Let's actually create a journey map of how our organization's interacting and how our customers intersect in that journey. And then we can start to invent. Then we can start to put together, crawl, walk, run visions of what we're about to do. And now we can connect it back and say, it relieves the customer sufferings. It moves our organization forward in a way that people are aligned with. Now we're going to pilot and do things that are design thinking or development work. But we have to have that compassion for who we are, why we're here, and what we're doing to make the connection between strategy and development.
You're completely spot on, Nicole. I told you that I had a tough call before I come see you. That was the exact problem. I've seen, customer pain points, but then also there is a lack of, the knowledge and understanding, from other different parts of the organization, right? So like you need to build compassion first internally, close the gap, and to finally solve the customer problems. I mean, like what you've just said, really, resonate with me so much right now. And is there any specific project apart from your book and your work? Is there any, exciting project you're working on around service innovation, or is there any particular topic you would like to share with the ISSIP community?
Yeah, so I have done a lot of work on using blockchain, and specifically on how we can use blockchain to support environmental and ethical decision making. It's work that I started when I was at Dell, and we're continuing forward at Iron Mountain. And so for me, it's incredibly exciting to think about how we can create these immutable records of understanding that other people have mutual access to in an informed and interesting way. And there's a lot of research and work that we can do around using these for the ethical good, or using these in an ethical manner to actually help promote equity in information access and in how we can interact with each other. So there's research to be done around there. And it's an incredibly exciting field of study, especially now that we see a movement away from inefficient blockchains to more efficient contracts. So that's something I'm incredibly passionate about and excited to move forward.
That's very interesting. And going back to the response, I need to just refresh my memory as well. It's been a while. Let me just pull it up. Yeah, you mentioned about one of the advices for the ISSIP leadership and members for 2022. You mentioned about investment in marketing and storytelling to increase awareness. You're completely spot on as well. Could you share some more thoughts or any other suggestions to us?
Yeah, so I have a secret superpower team. On my innovation team, I actually hired in somebody who is an expert at thought leadership generation and creation. And the reason I did this and invested a big portion of my budget towards this type of work is because if you invent and you innovate and it's not connected to a human story, you're not going to gain adoption. So I can think up the most brilliant ideas ever, right? Doesn't matter who, doesn't matter what. But if I can't tell that story in a way that connects with my internal customers and connects with my internal users and connects with my external customers and users, it doesn't matter what I do or how I do it. It's not going to gain adoption. So there's a secret power, well, not so secret anymore. There's a secret superpower that marketing teams have, which is they understand how to make that connection. They understand how to tell the story in a way that resonates with consumers so they see why they care in the short term. What's that immediate impact? And then they also see what the vision is, like, why do I care in the long term? And what that does is that creates a community, and that actually creates adoption, and that creates compassion for an idea or for an innovation. So for me, there is no innovation team without somebody who can help you effectively communicate what it is you understand and what you've learned and makes that connection between people.
Yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, as a designer in tech sector, that's exactly what design team does in most of the organizations. So I can't agree with you more. Before we close the call, do you have any final comments or thoughts you would like to share with the ISSIP community?
I think it's amazing that this community exists. I love being connected to it. And it's wonderful to be able to sit and talk and meet with people who have a passion for making things better. And that's really what I think innovation service is all about. So thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, Nicole, today. Thanks everyone, and hope to see you guys next time.